Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to today's panel. I'm very, very excited. Today, we are going to be talking about public sector AI. Pretty straightforward, but more specifically, our goal is to help you all walk away with extremely concrete ideas and things that people are doing today. So we have an incredible panel that I'm very excited to talk with, who will share everything on their mind because they're such great geniuses. And we want you, no matter where you are in your AI journey, to hopefully walk away with just actual concrete next steps and bring back anything back to your amazing cities to get started. So for today, I'm going to quickly introduce myself, but then let the rest of the folks talk more. My name is Chen. I am the co-founder and CEO of Hazel AI. We build AI-powered procurement software for governments, helping them save thousands of hours and hundreds of millions of dollars in procurement. And been working with plenty of cities, and so very, very excited to hear way more about other actual use cases that folks are working on, and also what they actually think about building more AI solutions in this space. So to quickly introduce now everyone else, and to do a quick icebreaker, would love to hear from you all. One, tell everyone your name, what you do, your role or roles, and one particular AI initiative that you're very proud of working on in the last 1 to 2 years. Should we do it? Great. Chase, you want to go first?
Hello, I am Jason Sankey. I am the Chief Information Officer for the City of Atlanta. And what were your questions?
One AI initiative.
One AI initiative.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone knows this, but every 2 minutes and 30 seconds, there's a major water main break in a city in the United States. And a couple years ago, the City of Atlanta, we had multiple water main breaks within a 3-week period of time. So that means no drinking water. That means no water to businesses. And so the infrastructure within the city is 80 years old. So how do you solve that overnight? You can't. So we started a pilot program where we put AI on the infrastructure, and now it detects leakage early. It also detects the flow of the water through the pipe. So if there are any variations in flow, that could mean that the pipe is getting ready to burst. We've already saved hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, and we've already detected early potential leakage.
That's awesome. Wow. John?
Hello, everybody. John Paul Farmer. I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a long intro. So one thing that I do is I'm president of Tomorrow.City USA, so very excited to have you all here. But I've got a few other jobs. My day job is at Stripe, where I'm building the public sector practice, trying to make sure that governments, universities, transit authorities, and more have access to the same financial technology that is now powering 5 million businesses worldwide in 50 different countries. But on top of that, I also serve on the board of Sand Technologies, focusing on some really similar projects to what Jason just mentioned around how do we use AI on critical infrastructure, whether that's water or healthcare clinics or telecommunications. There's so much more to do there. And then the question that August started us with about what are you proud of, I have to go a little further back because some of my, I guess, most formative experiences with public sector AI were when I was serving as the Chief Technology Officer of New York City, and we were able to put out an AI strategy back in 2021. And this is over a year before ChatGPT broke through and everyone was talking about LLMs, and at the time we had to convince people that this actually mattered. That this is actually something that a city like New York should care about enough to focus on. And so I'm proud of the fact that we were able to get out in front, lay the groundwork, which continues to benefit New York City and has helped other cities around the country learn and prepare for the age of AI.
Excellent. All right. Last but not least, Dartanion.
Hi, everybody. So good morning. My name is Dartanion Williams, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Data Officer for the great city of Baltimore. It's interesting. So in my role, I'd like to say I do 3 basic things, right? One, focus on improving city services, which really means making government work better. Also promoting transparency so that the public knows what we are doing and has access to open data. And then the third is accountability, promoting accountability so that we do what we say we're going to do and honor our commitments. And to do that, my team is focused on performance management, where we get signal on the city services that may need to improve. And then we have a design lab where we reimagine how services work and how processes work as well. And of course, all of that is powered through data. A fun AI initiative that I worked on last year. We were lucky enough to get a grant from Google to combat illegal dumping in the city of Baltimore. And for those of you who may not be familiar with illegal dumping, just imagine you're living in a row home, and then there's a vacant lot next to you. And then a hauler or someone just comes in and they just dump their boards, their tires, their rubbish next to your place, making it, increase blight, rodents and things of the like. So it's not pleasant. And it happens over and over and over again. And so the city has already invested in CCTV cameras. And so we thought, how might we take it to the next level and utilize that imagery to detect the dumping events so that as a city we can proactively respond to them. So that is probably the exciting, proud AI initiative where we use computer vision to be more efficient with combating illegal dumping.
That's excellent. Well, there you have it. I mean, AI, not chatbots, not people taking over jobs, not autonomous agents, but solving infrastructure, solving trash dumping, right? And so for these real use cases, it's like we don't talk. I feel like we don't talk about that enough in the context of this world where there's so much information to process. But this is what AI is really good at: is understanding and synthesizing really complex information for real use cases with real outcomes. So taking a step back now in this panel, because we really want to now kind of demystify a little bit of what everyone on stage is talking about. John, I'm going to start with you and ask you a quick question, which is, you mentioned going from New York City now to Stripe. You've seen plenty of projects go from 0 to 1, right? Like, it seems a little impossible to just say, like, yeah, we were going to save Atlanta hundreds of millions of gallons of water or something like that. What would you say is absolutely critical or necessary to be successful when you go to 0 to 1? Maybe like 1 to 2 things that you think.
The first thing I think is really Dartanion's world. And this was the number one recommendation that we had coming out of our AI strategy work back in 2020, 2021, which was you have to get your data house in order. If you're really going to get the most out of AI, you've got to have data that is clean, usable, cuts across the silos of government. So often we live in this agency, this department, never shall they actually share data. But if you really want to get the best insights, you need to be able to bring in all the data. And so you have to have the appropriate frameworks in place, the legal guardrails, et cetera. But you've got to do that work, and that's not necessarily as sexy, but it's foundational. And so I would recommend that everyone in a position of influence within government think about how they're improving their data infrastructure. In terms of how it is being used to go from 0 to 1 to do big projects, I think the example that Jason gave is spot on. And that's what we have to get to. We have to go beyond thinking about chatbots, which absolutely useful. I think most of the people here in this room probably use them on a daily basis. But we've got to think about the fact that AI is an umbrella term. LLMs and generative AI, relatively new on the scene, won't be the last breakthrough. And so we've got to think about all the different tools at our disposal and how do we use those to address the critical issues that we face. I think infrastructure is a big one. In New York City, the new mayor ran on affordability. And so he's thinking about how can I make every aspect of life more affordable? Well, we've got a lot of data that could help us do that, whether you're talking about housing or transit or water. What are all the different things that we can fix that are essentially in the supply chain of how someone experiences a service to make it more affordable and more accessible?
Absolutely. Having that North Star and creating the framework around being successful. I mean, my co-founder likes to say a lot, if you plan to fail, or if you fail to plan, you'll plan to fail, more likely. So Dartanion, building on top of that, we've talked a little bit about getting the house in order, but specifically, you got to do the boring stuff first. Now, can you tell the crowd what the boring stuff actually is?
JP mentioned that getting your data in order and data foundations is not sexy. It's not, but it's so incredibly critical. Why? Because, first of all, how many people have gotten a report from one person and got a report from someone else and the numbers were wrong or inconsistent? I'm sure we've all dealt with that. And so if you think about it, we want to have a good quality vetted repository of data that for city services, not just for reporting and analytics, but now now that AI is so much more accessible, you want to have that foundation in place so that you can do it well, responsibly, and at scale. Now, of course, you cannot always boil the ocean. So what we did in Baltimore is we started with our high-value data sets that are shared across agencies. So 311, right, what residents are requesting a service. Permitting, of course, for economic development, building, maybe I want to install a fence around my place. Public safety, so property and violent crime, everyone is interested in that. Housing, and then we also added fiscal data as well. The reason why those are important is because now we have insight across the pillars of government, and we can design our services and have insight into operations that way. The other thing that's really important, not exciting, is data governance. I think data governance, it's been around for a very, very long time. So many people have started those initiatives, maybe not completed it, but now the light has been shined on data governance, and we simply have to do it. You have to catalog your data assets. You have to classify your data assets, be it open, internal, sensitive, confidential. And then you need to describe, right, what these columns actually mean. And that's really important. Who's heard of a semantic layer? It's really, what it really means is sort of a cheat sheet to describe what the data means. Why is that important? Because that is context for your agents. So now your agents know what this column actually means and what to do with it. If you do data governance properly, you get that foundation right up front so that you are ready to adopt AI. You're ready for the pilots, the prerequisites have been met. I cannot underscore how critically important that is. Once you have that in place, you now have your foundation, you have trusted data, your analysts do not have to become engineers, and your AI doesn't have to do guesswork to understand what data you're working with.
Yeah, and who is building this in Baltimore, Dartanion?
Thank you for asking that. So many cities struggle with budget, of course. A lot of times you have to sell the vision to prioritize data foundations, data governance, data warehousing, data lake, all of these things. So we had a similar situation in the city of Baltimore. And so my team is actually building it out in-house. We use open source tooling. And what that really means is, we're a Microsoft shop, and so we're on Azure. All of our ingest jobs are coded through with Python. Not to get too technical, but we orchestrate our jobs, which really means sequencing the work through a job scheduler. We have containers, and what that really means, is a little tiny process that starts and stops to move the data. Not to get too technical, but anyway, we build it internally. Some cities partner with organizations and have platforms for it. The point is, you have to do it. And so so long as you have that foundation in place and that governance in place, you will be much better positioned for business intelligence, AI, Gen BI, and all of the other emergent technologies.
Excellent. Wow, very inspirational. So I think we've heard a lot about getting the house in order, a lot of this data governance, a lot of data work, a lot of data governance work. But I feel like there's a lot of folks that might want to just keep doing this until Kingdom Come, and feel like they'll never be able to get their house in order because there's just simply too much data. Maybe something's always going to live in some warehouse somewhere down the street, and they'll never feel ready to take that next step. I certainly, we obviously work with Atlanta, right, Jason? And I'm not sure if your procurement data is all good to go. So what would you say in response to what John and Dartanion are saying in terms of like getting this house in order, doing a lot of boring work first, Like, how much do you agree with what they're talking about?
I completely agree with everything that was said. However, what I'll also say is, as a city, you can't not move forward in this space because your house isn't in order. So, for example, I've been with the city for 5 years. We have 30 departments. We've gone through 3 chief procurement officers. We've gone through 3 chief legal officers. We've gone through 4 chief human resources officers. I've gone through 3 CISOs and 2 CTOs in 5 years. So
that's worse than the Jets, I think. Sorry, I'm from New York. I'm very sad about that.
We have a much better record, though, than the Jets. So I say that to say we had a governance team. We put together a committee. And we got excited about it. We started with the foundation, governance, policy, all these things. 6 months later, there were 5 of us. There were only 2 of us that remained. And so now it's who do we replace these folks with? And we went through that challenge. So then we said, okay, that's great from a data perspective. We have to do this. But let's not stop us from moving forward. So we do these pilot programs, and it's kind of ITIL related. We're gonna start where we are. And then we're going to continue with those larger, more grand projects to get our house in order, but we're not going to limit ourselves from partners that, like Hazel, that will help us now. It may not be perfect, but we aren't going to fall behind in this AI race.
I just want to add, I think you're exactly right. We can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. We've got to do all these things all at once. The world's not waiting for us. As people's expectations increase, we've got to make sure we're doing the work to meet them. I feel strongly, I've worked in both government, I was in the White House, I was with City Hall in New York, now I'm in the private sector. I feel so strongly that there's a role for each to play here. At Stripe, people think of us as a payments company, absolutely true, but we also do fraud detection. And that's using AI on the $1.9 trillion a year that we process. So we've got a bunch of data that governments are not going to have. So we've got a role to play in actually making you richer in your decision making by using the tools that we can bring to the table. And I do think that this gets to the procurement conversation then, where we've got to think about modernizing our approach to procurement so that we're sitting on the same table, we're working together and not fighting against each other in some ways. Obviously, you got to make sure this is all done appropriately. There are rules for a reason, but we've got to be thoughtful about how we're applying our procurement rules to make sure that we're actually able to ensure that the best tools from the private sector are able to get into government. And honestly, Stripe had not been thinking about this. This is why I went to Stripe last year, was to build this functionality, this ability to work closely to understand the needs and the way to serve public sector in a way that, again, meets all the rules, but allows us to actually get our tools in their hands more quickly so that they can do the good work of government.
Yeah, I so appreciate all of this. And also to kind of build on top of that one more time, it's like a lot of these processes, though, that, John, you're talking about can make fields feel a little stuck. So I know Dartanion and Jason, if there was anything that you felt like are good examples where you helped shake up a little bit of the process, you know, make folks feel like, oh, we're going to get things moving even though they feel like they're just stuck in place. Like anything like that you can talk about from like the last couple of years? Or, yeah, John, you too, obviously, from New York City.
Yeah, I can start. So in procurement, I completely agree. You have to get through the procurement challenge. If there's anyone here in procurement, I'd love to speak to you afterwards and figure out how we can get along a little better. But the procurement challenge in Atlanta, we took a different approach to it, and it's still within city code and everything's good. So the mayor increased the small purchase to $100,000. And what that means from a technology perspective is opened up a lot of doors because we're able to do smaller proof of concepts that aren't RFP competitively bid that takes 12, 18 months. And so if we can prove out the technology within that $100,000 threshold, then we can build on that and we can go through procurement and do a special procurement because they've already proven out the technology. And that's helped with a lot of startups that we want to partner with and get away from really just the big names, but also invest in small businesses in the city of Atlanta.
Hello. Hi. Well, for us, we have been stuck on a number of things, but I will talk about data sharing. Anyone had that challenge? We can't get the access to data from the housing department or the fire department, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there are always ways to get around those types of situations, and for us, we started a community of practice around data. And so we call it the Citywide Data Network, where we bring in and connect data professionals across the city, where we share best practices. We have happy hours and we socialize it, with the goal being to share what other agencies are doing, what we're doing at City Hall, as well as to build community and build trust. That has gone a long way toward getting people involved in data stewardship, getting people a good understanding of where we're headed, as well as our partners understanding why, what we're doing with the data, what we're working toward, and what we're building, as well as why that's important. That has allowed for people to buy into the process, to get involved in the process, and ultimately build trust and unblock that data sharing bit. The second thing on the policy on the policy side, though, is you really do have to work with privacy and legal, especially around public safety and youth data, to ensure that you are following regulations properly. You document them clearly, and you can refer back to that documentation when access requests become a little bit murky. You always want to be rooted in policy and have a quick reference to that. So that's gone a long way toward data access issues and positioned us very well to have access to sources to build out our warehouse.
I think innovation test beds are incredibly important right now because we're at this moment where so much more is becoming possible with technology, and yet you've got a vendor ecosystem that probably looks like it did 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and hasn't changed a lot. Innovation test beds allow a government to go try out new technologies with new partners and to see how it goes. And as people on stage said, I think the CIO of Vermont, CIO of Georgia, fail fast. And don't fail with some kind of critical infrastructure. Do it in a test bed. Do it in a test bed setting. And I think what people are going to find out is a lot of times these tools are going to work better than they expected. And then they're going to say, okay, now we can move to procurement. And so doing pilots in a test bed environment with a path toward procurement, not as kind of a separate initiative that's got really no future of going live, but a way where you use that as a test bed to de-risk it. So then government feels more confident adopting. It's going to allow you to get the lawyers on board more quickly. It's going to allow you to make sure you've checked all the boxes on digital rights, on privacy, et cetera. And I think the test beds, whether it's in New York, where it's going on, LA Metro is talking about it, Georgia, Vermont, I'm sure you guys also. So I think that's something where we can learn from each other, look at what other cities and states are doing, and de-risk the ability to bring in new players and new technologies.
That's excellent. I'm really glad the answer wasn't just sending angrier and angrier emails internally until you get what you want. No, that's excellent. And I think we've already alluded to this aspect, but I just want to cover it for a couple more minutes and just ask a very direct question, because we've already talked about partnering with startups, right, like us, or partnering with the existing vendor ecosystem who feels like they have so much leverage over public sector just because they know they're the only ones operating any of the big names, right, that we're all thinking about. What would you hope that, I mean, John, now that you're at Stripe, right, maybe speak from another perspective, but what do you hope the private sector would understand when it comes to public-private partnerships, specifically in tech and AI, or in the opposite way, like what do you hope the public sector would get, that, Stripe would complain about, something like that? Yeah?
I'll go back to when I was in the White House and we created the Presidential Innovation Fellows. I think the very first project we identified was making small business procurement more competitive, inviting more small businesses to be a part of the procurement process. So we did some A/B testing with the Small Business Administration and live testing real projects, and we did it through their old way, which was like an 8-hour process that only people with armies of lawyers knew how to navigate, and then we turned it into a, half-hour process that was much easier and more intuitive. And we just A/B tested those two things with several different contracts. We got an average of 3 bids on the old way of doing things. So you got 3 players, not very competitive. Probably one of the usual suspects is going to get chosen. They know that. And then the new way got an average of 36 bids. So a 12 times more competitive marketplace. And what you saw was a 30% average lower cost, anecdotally better performance. And I think that's just what we've got to think about doing when we think about how we do procurement, is ensuring that we're opening it up and getting competitive marketplaces, and we're really inviting in the community. And that doesn't change at all the rubric that gets applied. But what it does do is, as we've seen, lowers costs, improves quality, and it connects the innovation ecosystem in the private sector to government in a way that I think is really important. And I will say, as someone who's worked at several different companies, often people in the private sector view government as this kind of mountain off in the distance surrounded by smoke, and it's confusing, and I don't understand it. And we've got to address that too. We've got to make sure that they understand that the government is a critical segment of our society in terms of serving our communities. But it's also one that, even if the rules are a little bit different, it's possible to figure them out and to work with them. And we've got to kind of demystify that and make it more accessible.
Just to add to that, I would like companies, vendors, we actually have great partners across the board in Atlanta, but I'd like them to understand that city government operates differently, and it's okay that we operate differently. What I mean by that, great partnership with, I'll use the actual company with Microsoft. Great partnership with Microsoft. We're a Microsoft shop, and every 3 years we have to sign a new agreement, and it just takes a long time. We talk about procurement. There's also the legal side of things, the T's and C's, and Microsoft doesn't want to change their T's and C's, and neither does a city, right? So we have to get through that obstacle. And then the contract comes to expiration, and Microsoft says, we're going to cancel your services because we haven't signed the contract. And I have to say, okay, go ahead. Let's see how that plays out on CNN. And why do we have to go through that? Just understand we're a city, we operate differently, we will get the contract, you will get paid. That will make both of our lives a lot easier and less stressful.
The first thing I did last year when I joined Stripe was I listened to all the public sector folks who were having trouble with Stripe's T's and C's, and we updated them. We've got a public sector addendum, and I did have to have some internal battles on this because some of the folks were like, all right, let's give them half of what they're asking for and not the other half, and then we'll negotiate. And I was like, guys, they can't do these things. They legally can't indemnify us. They can't allow us to use their logo in PowerPoints. There's a list of things you've got to understand what it's like to be in government, what the procurement rules look like, and you just got to get there as a business. And I think that the more we can explain that to companies, I think they can get it. You're just dealing with the reality that most folks in these companies have never worked in government before, and they just don't quite understand it yet. But I think more dialogue is the way to get there.
Oh, yes. Government is very, very, very complicated. But I love it. I think this is the best time to work in local government. And for the private sector, I think I would like to see a world where we all know that we're all in this together. I would like to see more public-private partnerships. When you think of cities, especially local government, I mean, we are all of the industries. We're transportation, we're public health, we're energy, we're environment, we're facilities, we're finance, like all of the things. And so the talent and the knowledge and the practices from the private sector very much do apply to many of the operations in the public. And so I do envision a future where we bring our worlds more closely together, and also envision a future where we have more innovation labs, less procurement hurdles, and we just work together to make this world a better place.
I love that. Yeah, guys, come on, play nice. All right, we only got a couple minutes left, so I appreciate so much of what you guys all said today. To close it out, imagine you had just unlimited or just like plenty of resources. Like in the next 5 to 10 years, if you could accomplish one thing that was like AI powered, what would it be? And yeah, feel free to take like a couple seconds to think on it. But yeah, really big out there ideas, optimistic ideas, and if you could solve one thing, I know mine would just be straight up clean New York City forever. But yeah, what would it be?
Well, for me, it would be, I don't know, show of hands, who's been to Atlanta? Who's driven in Atlanta? Who's happy with the traffic? Mine would be to solve all traffic issues in the city of Atlanta.
I believe that. We're going to do it. You're going to do it.
+1 to solving traffic issues just across the nation. So I think of AI, technology, digital transformation. It saves time. I think time is the most finite resource out here, and many of the apps and many of the integrations and recent innovations do just that. The thing that has not really been solved for at scale is transportation and mobility. And so think in 5 years, think about how the cities and the states and the counties can all be, connected. Think about the sensors and IoT devices that can be installed. Think about autonomous vehicles. Think about the future of rapid transit. I do see a very optimistic future where cities, counties, and states can work together to design and reimagine a transportation ecosystem to get people from point A to point B much more efficiently. That was a really good one.
I think about just redesigning our processes because AI is going to enable us to do so much. I think about, similar to the example that Jason shared, Asong here from Sand. Sand's been working with the City of London, Thames Water Authority. I mean, they took them from guys banging on pipes with sticks in the 21st century to sensors and AI helping to actually prevent leaks, not just respond to them after they start. So I think that's one example. But then you've got think about my role at Stripe and the payment systems and how have we structured our benefits disbursements programs. They're built with a bunch of barriers to prevent people from participating with the idea that that's going to prevent fraud. But it also prevents legitimate usage. So let's get a lot more intelligent with modern identity tools, with anti-fraud tools that are absolutely AI powered to automate these things, to redesign these programs so we can get more of those dollars going to the folks who are in need, less going to fraud, and not always fraud. Sometimes it's just leakage, it's administrative burden. All of that stuff, in some ways, not entirely, but in some ways can be automated. We're going to have better visibility, more transparency, more real time, and less leakage. So I think there's just a massive opportunity to think about how do we use these new tools to redesign the way we deliver government.
All right, thank you guys so much. I mean, everything from AI for water infrastructure to making sure that the folks who live in our cities get paid for what they really need on a day-to-day basis to making sure that we are picking up trash everywhere we go. And then eventually solving traffic, I guess. I feel like we've had such good discussions today, and I hope everyone walked away today with really, really concrete ways of thinking about how to go back, thinking about your AI practices, thinking about your data, but most importantly, tomorrow is tomorrow. So go back there and get on it. Thank you guys so much to our wonderful panel, Jason, John, Dartanion. My name is August, and thank you guys so much for coming to this panel today. All right, enjoy the rest of the day in Palm Beach.
Thank you.
Thank you.